Let's talk about geometries. In this tutorial, we put a couple of nodes together into one clip, and these are basically the base shapes. Others we will cover separately because they are a little bit more complex, right? So like always, let's open a new scene here and let's jump here to the logic layout. And as you can see in the toolbox, I selected already the geometry category, right? And here in that category, you can find all the shapes, everything regarding geometries in Ventuz, yeah, all the geometry nodes. In this clip, we will cover the rectangle, the rounded rectangle, the cube, the circle, a sphere, a cylinder, the cone, a torus, and the gradient rectangle. And everything else we will have in separate clips like the chart nodes, yeah, because they are a little bit more complex, as well as random points, geometry, renderer and mesh loaders, and things like that. Also, particle systems we have to cover in a separate movie because that nodes are pretty complex. Okay, let's get started. Let's start here with a rectangle. And if we bring in that rectangle, we can see here on the right side in our properties the different properties for each of that geometries, right? I think we don't have to go through all the properties because many of them are self-explaining, right? But let's start here with a rectangle. Let's also bring quickly axis in front, just that we can scale it up a little bit more, that we can see what's happening, right? So for example, with the rectangle, we have a size X, we have a size Y, and most of the properties are very similar in all that base shapes. In all the other geometries we will cover, right? So then we have the normalize option, then we have align X and Y. So let's show you that one. So we can align it in X on the left, right? And this is, for example, a very nice way to create progress bars, things like that, right? Or we can also align it in the center. That's the default, basically. Even with that, we can make progress bars, right? Or we as well can align it on the bottom, and then we can maybe do a kind of a bottom top progress bar, or for elections, some charts, things like that, right? Then we also have here the tessellation. The tessellation is important when you, for example, want to morph these geometries with shaders or things like that, right? So let's bring that back here to default. To see that tessellation, let's turn on wireframe here, right? So by default, we have tessellation of 1, but if we increase the tessellation in X, then you can see we get much more higher resolution mesh, basically, right, with all the triangles. Then we also have here the subset and the frame. So that subset is basically if there is a geometry which consists out of more than one mesh, right? So then with that subset, you basically can select which mesh you want to see. So -1 means show all the meshes in that one geometry, right? So here on top, you also, let's turn off quickly here the wireframe. Here on top, you also can switch to different geometries, basically, right? And as you can see, when we switch here to the rounded rectangle, then we get a couple of more options, right? So we have here, for example, the round size. Then we have a Boolean, so which corners I want to have rounded and which not, right? Then we also can change here, for example, the alignment of the where the center point is for that round corners. If we want to have it from the center, then it will basically scale a little bit differently, right? If we have it here on the outer, it will also change a little bit differently. So let's call it the inner, right? So, and that means we have here now that nice rounded corners, right? Then we also can choose here at the with the rounded rectangle. Hey, do we want to have it filled, right? So maybe you just want to make a frame. Then you can turn this off, and also turn this all these guys off, and then we can create kind of a little frame for whatever we want for our content, basically, right? Also here we have the alignment. And similar like in the normal rectangle node, we can also align that left or right. Right, so let's bring that a bit more here to that side, and let's make it not filled. Let's make it a bit smaller. Let's make it a bit longer, right? And then maybe let's use here another rectangle node, behind, so that means on top. And we also make the alignment on X left, right? And now let's make that smaller for right? And now we already have a very simple progress bar, right? Adding some colors and things like that, okay? So let's go to the next one. So again, you can choose it from here, right? Let's go to the cube, but you're also able to simply drag and drop it in from here. That's totally up to you. Let's reset all that settings, at least this one. So now let's talk a bit about the cube and let's check the different settings on the cube. So if we select here our cube, then we can see we have, of course, a size X, a size Y, and a size Z. And with that, yeah, 3D three-dimensional geometries, we also have mostly that bevel radius, right, to give it some nice rounded edges, right, which can then give nice reflections with lights and things like that to just give a little bit more depth into it, right. As well here we have the alignment X, Y, Z, and of course we also have here a tessellation in all the three axes, right, and we have also a tessellation bevel. This option is basically how how the UV maps are working on the geometries basically, right? So here you can choose between flat and between dies, but this properties also depends on the geometry basically, right? So if we go back here to a rectangle and we don't have here that. I think we only have that on the exactly. We have it here on the rounded when we have really, let's say a couple of different, when we can basically change our mesh, right? So as you can see here now, we can extremely change our mesh here, right? And of course, this will also extremely, change the UV maps, right? And here you can change that. You have much more options than on the cube. So we have flat, we have wrap, we have stretch 2x2 and stretch 4x4. So simply try that out by adding a texture onto it. Let's do it quickly together with one example. Let's add a texture here, just the default black and white pattern, right? And as you can see, flat is default. If we wrap it, you can see then it's going kind of around. If we put it stretch 2x2, then you can see he's only putting it here on the corners. And if we stretch it 4x4, then you can see the corners will have a different scale of the UVs compared to the center here, right? So this really depends, what look you want to have, what texture you use. But it's really sometimes very handy, okay? Here that subsets, exactly subsets, I explain later on when we talk here about the mesh loader, exactly. Um, Also new is, or at least since Ventuz 6, I think we have here under the geometry, we also have here our transform. So here we can add an axis, right? So as you can see, let's delete here the texture. As you can see, I deleted the axis. But now we also have full access basically to axis, right? So we have here now an axis inside our rectangle node. Yeah, it's called cube, but let's delete it. Let's go maybe with the circle now. And we also have here the transform where we can add an axis. Yeah, so that's also totally up to you. My personal preference is actually using axis because I'm used to that, and it really keeps it for me very clear where I changed scalings, where I changed positions and things like that, instead having it here in the geometry node, right? But again, that's totally up to you. It's there, and use it if you want. Okay, so let's delete that circle. Let's go on here with the sphere. So as well here, we also can add the transform axis here, but let's do it like I'm used to with the axis here in front. Make it a bit larger, and let's go here to the sphere. And as you can see, we also have here the size X, we have the size Y, and we have the size Z, right? Can create X, for example. Then we also have the alignment X and Y, and we as well can increase or decrease the tessellation, right? So let's bring that much more down, right? So now you have a more edgy sphere, right? Something like that. But again, that totally depends on you what you want to do here. Let's jump to the next one. We have here the cylinder. The cylinder, let's rotate that guy a bit, right? So now you can see it's really a cylinder. Also here we have the bevel radius, right? We can choose which edges we want to bevel basically, right? So the top or the top outer, right? Now we only bevel here that top edge, that circle here, right? But not the bottom, but we also can do that. Right now we also beveled the bottom and the top, and of course all the others are not important now, right? We have the alignment. We also have subsets, which we want to show, right? So do we want to have that top, or we don't want to have it? And of course, we also have the tessellation, right, for all that parts of our cylinder. Okay. As well here, we also have the texture, which involves then the UV map basically, and so on. Okay, let's go to the next one. We also have a cone. So with that cone, you can see, let's turn off that one. Let's rotate it by -90. Right, so now we have our cone here, and of course we have the size of our bottom. We have basically the size X and Y. We have the top size, right? So let's rotate it a bit just to see how it looks like, right? And of course also here, right? So you have a lot of of properties for this guy here, right? Again, we have the alignment X, Y, and Z, and we also have the tessellations here. I think that's all very self-explanatory. Yes, explains everything by itself. Let's go to the torus. And then we can see as well the torus. Let's check all that settings of the torus, right? We have basically the size torus and the size of the tube, right? So basically the diameter of the torus and basically the inner size or the outer size of the torus, right? If you want to make something super small, like a ring or so, right? So then you have here full options, and as well the alignment and the tessellation. Okay, so the last thing we want to cover in this is the gradient rectangle, right? So with the gradient rectangle, let's zero that out. With the gradient rectangle, basically, yeah, it's what the name says. You have a gradient rectangle where you can do whatever backgrounds for a lower third or for whatever, right, for some broadcast graphics. And of course, here you have also the color where you can say, okay, my first color should be, let's say, blue, and my second one should be also blue, but a little bit darker blue, right? And as well, the gradient, right? So the gradient you also can change here from vertical or to horizontal or to diagonal and things like that, right? As well, here you can see now, if we make vertical centered, nothing will happen because here we need now a tessellation, right? So to make the tessellation, we also have that here, simply increase here that tessellation a bit, and then you can see we get that nice gradient, right? Exactly. So that's basically, yes, what we have here. And of course, we also have the alpha. Let's bring that back to left to right. And as you can see, we can also change here the alpha from left to right, can increase it here, and maybe let's change that color to a red one, right? And now we have, a nice gradient from blue to red, from left to right.